welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started.
Hi everyone, welcome to our latest episode on the Procurement Pivots podcast. We are delighted to be here with you once again, and today we're going to be talking about vision in your procurement career. So do you want to kind of talk through why we decided to pick this episode, Laura?
Yeah, sure. Welcome, everybody. So vision, I think, is a really important part of procurement careers, but also for procurement teams, and functions where when you're working to something that you haven't yet reached, so be it in your career or as a team. And so it comes up a lot in coaching conversations as part of our goal setting exercises. We always like to start with the end in mind, and we've mentioned that a few times before. So we thought that actually delving into vision a bit more might be quite useful for some of our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've just touched on that. Vision can be so relevant, can't it, in just so many different facets. I mean, even out of your professional career, I think in your own personal life as well, kind of knowing where you'd love to get to, like say in a few years' time. But I think, if we're talking about, professional settings here, so, in so many different aspects, having that kind of future vision can just be so positive and can actually stretch you, I think, and help you to grow, help you develop, help you to maybe get to a slightly more kind of aspirational place. But if you don't have it, you're probably unlikely to get there if you don't like intentionally take those steps to get to a certain place.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well for procurement professionals, a lot of their job as well involves selling a bit of a vision to their
Mhm.
stakeholders, to
Yeah,
the C-suite, depending on how the setup is of their team. So being able to not only visualize it but communicate it to others is also a key part of achieving a vision, really. So
totally.
so we want to delve into a few of those different steps, don't we, about what that would look like, what our clients come up against,
Yeah.
what kind of aspects we help them to look at. So where should we start with this one?
Should we start with should we start with the kind of the different aspects in which, we experience people are
Mm,
kind of coming to us talking about that future vision, either for themselves personally or for their team or their function.
sure. Great starting point.
Yeah. So shall I kick off?
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
So my most of my conversations with individuals, and most of them are senior. So it is in relation to them personally, generally, I would say. And so yeah, I think vision comes up quite a lot when we're looking at the career path options that are open, like where do they actually want to get to. And actually, we're saying this like it's simple, like knowing what the vision is isn't necessarily that simple. Like that in itself can be quite a big exercise to get to that point of working out like the where is it you actually want to get to. But yeah, in my world, so I'd say it's generally yeah, so it'll be for individuals, like when they're kind of future proofing or future planning their kind of pathway in their career. Where do they personally want to get to? And what does success look like for them? And we come back to this quite a bit, don't we? I think um, there's a lot of quite traditional views on that linear career path in procurement, and actually you have to end up as a CPO. You should be working on the next level, but I think it's the vision on your own terms, like where do you actually want to get to, not where do you feel you should be heading in your career. But then also I think like the vision piece does come up. So where I'm supporting people with stepping into new roles as well, I think it does then come into the kind of internal realm. So it might be, for instance, what is your 30, 60, 90-day plan for, for you, for the team going into that new role. And where is it that you're looking to, to take things for the business internally. But I'd say more of the time with the work I'm doing, it's kind of helping individuals to actually kind of clarify really, what is the vision that they actually want for themselves. And
Mm,
then once they become clear on what's the direction, where do they want to get to, then it's a case of kind of looking at, okay, well, what's the journey to get there? And there's often lots of different routes. It's not just one route.
mm.
There can be lots of different ways to get to that same point.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have to be a bit flexible sometimes on the roads to take, right?
Totally, totally.
Yeah. I love what you say about that, about how, it's valid across all of the types of work that we're doing in coaching, right? But vision is an important part of that, whether it is an individual career perspective.
Yeah,
You mentioned also the 30, 60, 90-day plans,
yeah,
which, resonates definitely with me, with some of my clients. So I think where it comes up for me when I'm working with a CPO or with a senior leader who has just taken on a new role, they want to make a great impression in those
yeah,
first 90 days or 6 months, but also they might be taking the function to new heights, or taking them, or growing the function. So it's okay, what's the vision of what you want this team to look like, what you want the
yeah.
function to look like, but also how do you and your career fit into this? Because there has to be
Mm,
that intertwined motivation, let's say, because we've talked about alignment many times.
yeah.
So if that alignment's not there, it can cause career unhappiness, but also it can cause, I guess, confusion in the wider setup of a procurement function and the trajectory of the team, let's
Mm,
say. So we tend to work on, if we're going to be tackling selling this vision to the stakeholders, what does that look like? When do we want to achieve that by? And I think this is where storytelling comes into the vision as well, right? What we were saying earlier about the communicating the vision.
mm,
So, yeah, there's loads to go at with this subject, but I really love that because vision is part of my personality makeup, let's say. If I think about my insights, colours,
yeah,
it's and those the people I work with, we can sometimes have a really great picture of what it is we want to
yeah.
achieve, but sometimes the how is the bit that's missing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think I like your point. I mean, the alignment, that kind of alignment piece comes up a lot, doesn't it?
Mm,
Where things don't feel quite right. And I think you're so right. Like actually aligning that team or function vision with your own kind of personal goals can be really important, but also then looking at the team as well. I guess it's kind of, understanding what their own kind of personal career related goals are and how that can then tie into that overarching kind of vision. And,
mm,
they're going to buy in much more, aren't they, if they feel like there's a personal gain for them to help them
mm,
to also kind of get to that point that they're looking to get to next.
mm. I think something else as well that comes up quite a lot in the conversations is like when they have that vision and they're struggling to sell it, they don't necessarily have the
Mm,
sponsorship, the tenacity and the resilience that you need to keep driving towards a vision that
yeah,
not everybody can see yet.
yeah,
So there's a lot of work that we do around that because sometimes it might be that you've built a procurement function from scratch where you were and you love to take on that challenge again when you go to a new role. So
yeah,
you've been there before, it's
yeah.
possible, but maybe the environment of the new organization's different or something like that, or the stakeholders have got a different view. It could be many things. But I think it's sort of a double-edged strategy that you need to go
Yeah,
because there's the keeping going with that,
yeah,
that vision, because when it feels hard, you want to have the tools to keep going and not giving up on
mm,
it too soon. But then there's the keeping the sponsors of that project, let's say this, the mentors that you might have, the cheerleaders, and the
Yeah,
challenges. Yeah, how do you bring everybody else on board with that vision is
yeah.
something else that I think comes up quite a lot.
Mm. And actually, kind of coming back to the career, kind of the career vision, I think, because actually, I think like often in that leadership role, individuals do have that vision of where it is they're trying to get to for the team, for the function. But I think like often as individuals, like we're in a market where many individuals haven't experienced a job market like we've been in over the last few
Mm.
years. And I think like it's one thing kind of knowing where you want to get to, but right now a lot of people don't have the belief that that's possible as well. And
Mm.
so I think like yeah, it's an interesting dynamic right now that, some people that historically have been quite ambitious with their future goals and future direction in their career, I think have almost lost that kind of ambition, because they don't think it's possible. They don't think the roles are out there. They're not seeing the opportunities. And then
Mm.
kind of actually, the plan is not quite as maybe assertive or as confident as it once was because there is this doubt around, I don't want this like grand plan if it's not even possible.
Well, mindset is a huge part of vision, isn't it? I think.
Totally,
Yeah, yeah,
totally. And I think that
yeah.
the should versus the want as well, like that comes up so much
Mm.
in the conversations. Like, this week I was working with someone who's actually got, quite a lot of kind of previous leadership and management experience, but they're changing geography. And I think they just felt I should now go to a much lower level role in order to enter that new geography, as opposed to, well, what would you ideally like to do? Would you like to kind of
Mm.
maintain that level? And if so, how do we look at how you make that happen, even whilst changing geography? So I think like often, we kind of, we do the thing that we think maybe is the safer option, the easier option, the thing that most people would expect us to do, as opposed to, actually think, what's the vision, what's the goal, what's the plan of what I actually want that's going to
Mm.
energize me and make me most excited.
Yeah, true. And I think that's where the motivation ties in with that vision, what you were saying earlier about when nobody else can see it,
Mm,
and or that thing that you dare to dream. What I find really interesting, right, and just what you were saying there about the shoulds and the wants, I reconnected with an old client that I coached 3 years ago,
yeah,
and it was we'd not had any conversation in between, so I had no idea where they were in
yeah,
their role when they came in, and so they booked in and we started talking and it was so funny because they were about to make a huge change in their career. They were leaving their current role, but some things had materialized for them over the 3 years and they couldn't understand why. And it was in their vision, it was in the conversations. And I was like, do you remember when we spoke about this? And when
mm,
we spoke about that, and it might not have been the focus of the goal at the time, it was a longer term thing, but planting those seeds and having that vision and subconsciously working towards something can also bring about those opportunities. So focusing on the process more than the outcome sometimes. You've got the vision, but
yeah,
it's hunkering down on the process to get you
yeah,
there. So like I think, and I've said this so many times before, breaking it down. Let's break the
yeah,
vision down. And what are the first steps? Like you were saying with that client, what were the
yeah,
first steps to actually get you to consider those opportunities about what you want and not just what you should?
yeah.
So yeah, it's I get really excited by people's visions, especially when they go
Oh,
and achieve it.
yeah. And I also love it that, often at the beginning of the work, because quite a lot of the people coming to me, they're coming at a crossroads, like they don't know what's next. And, sometimes there is doubt and there is kind of maybe, events have led to a bit of a kind of lack of confidence, in that decision making as to what to do next. And so I love this work and seeing where people then get to. And sometimes, helping them to create that vision that ends up being something quite different than what they originally anticipated, but it feels so much more right and so much more aligned.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. And so, alignment is so important that I want to come back to something that we touched on earlier, but we didn't delve into it at the time. What we were talking about sponsorship and
Mm,
communicating with others, because obviously we're talking about this from a coaching perspective.
yeah,
But when you have a vision that you're working towards, and maybe you're trying to sell that internally in an organization, or you're talking with a partner about something that you want to do in terms of your
yeah.
career, how important is that sponsorship for a vision, do we think?
I mean, I think it all scenarios are going to be quite different, but I would say like very important. Like it's understanding. Like, yeah, I think probably, regardless as to what aspect of your life it is or what the plan or the vision is, there are going to be like almost like stakeholders. It's
Mm,
not necessarily stakeholders if it's not an internal piece, but there are going to be people that can help you make that happen and make it happen better, make it
mm,
happen sometimes quicker, make it an easier process. And I think, a big part of this is working out actually who are those sponsors, stakeholders, supporters,
mm,
advocates, whatever we want to call them, because in every different scenario, it's going to be different. Like it could be your partner, your personal, your life partner, it could be your friend, it could be a colleague, it could be a
mm,
boss. But I think it's, yeah, understanding, like actually, so where is it that I would love to get to, either for yourself, for your team, for your function, you personally? But yeah, who are the people that can help you? And I just think as well, like, you know, I think, writing these things down can help make it real, cement it. Sharing it with someone else can help with your accountability. Like when you actually, like, many of us will have these kind of, ideas or plans, but actually when you start to map it out in writing, it does start making it feel more real when you start looking at the steps. And when you start sharing it out loud with someone, like it can hold you to account, but it can
mm,
also yeah, just kind of it I think it increases the chances of it happening when you are communicating it in the right way to the right people. So yeah, I think that yeah, whether we call it sponsorship or not, is going to be really, really important. And I think probably in most scenarios I can't think that there would be scenarios where, the right other people wouldn't be able to help you to get there. What do
mm.
you think?
Well, where I was going with this when I was thinking about that, like there's three things, and one of them is a trap that I've fallen into myself many a
Go on.
time. Vision, when you have a vision and you think that because only you can see it, that you can't ask for help to get there, you will get there quicker. You will get there quicker with enlisting help. And this is where people have the struggle sometimes about either articulating it, but about getting those sponsors that we were talking about is making sure you've got a good balance of sponsorship. And what I mean by that is that you're going to have maybe a partner who always believes in you no matter what, as an example. And then you might have somebody who's a negative person in the, let's
Yeah,
just say in the organization, who's like anti whatever it is you're trying to
yeah.
deliver. And sometimes we listen to the negative voices more than we do the positive, but we need a balance. We need someone who's going to be our cheerleader, who's going to believe in us no matter what.
Mm,
And, whether that is a coach, whether it's a family member, whoever that is, you need that, because when you don't believe in yourself, and we talked about mindset earlier, you need someone to remind you that you can do
yeah,
this, and then on the other side of things, you need your challenges, right? So what I mean by this is ones who offer you a different perspective, not negative naysayers.
yeah.
You need to find a way to tune out those people. And a hint, by the way, when people are saying that it can't be done, they're talking about themselves a lot of the time, rather than whether you're capable of doing it. But it's just someone who can offer you a different perspective, and you feel safe with that person where they can say, "Have you tried thinking about it from this point of view?" or
Mm,
doing this or trying a
yeah,
different road to it. So I think that's where I see a lot of success. And going back to what you were saying of writing it down, apologies, I was typing while you were saying that because it reminded me the stat I was looking for. So if we write down our goals, we apparently you're 42% more likely to achieve them when you write them down.
Oh, brilliant, because I write all mine down. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
There you go, nailing it.
Right. Win lottery tonight. That's mine.
Write them down.
Yes.
Yeah,
But what there is something around that in terms of like influence as well, like when about commitment. So when we get people to publicly state their commitments
yeah,
in a team meeting, write them down, or if you're doing it in a session with a coach, you are more likely to hold yourself accountable for that.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the three strands I was going at when you asked me that question was around when it comes to the vision and the communicating and the sponsorship, have a good balance and a good mix. So there is
Yeah.
holding yourself accountable,
Yeah.
but don't think you have to do it on your own. You probably can do it on your own. It might just take you longer, but because we are all human and only have
Mm-hmm.
so many hands. Uh, so so there's that, but there is that balance of having your cheerleaders and having your challengers. It's
Yeah.
important to have both and not
Yeah.
only surround yourself with one, because you might be missing key insights if you don't have any challengers. But equally, if you have too many challengers who are more negative than they are positively challenging,
Mm.
you're gonna have some self-doubt. So
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
towards that vision, make sure you've got a balance.
Yeah. And I think just on that, the kind of the sponsorship piece. So from a personal perspective, something you were talking about there really resonated because when I decided last year that I was setting up the business, like actually I didn't really know that many people that had their own businesses. And I kind of recognized that from a support system perspective, that did need to change because I knew that lots of people say you go from in-house in a corporate role in a team environment to suddenly you're at home, you're working on your own, like having that support system was important. And I thought I'm just going to do some local networking events, like
Mm,
local business owners. And I did one really early on and it was so negative. It was it was aimed at new business owners. And I thought, this is perfect. I'll meet people in the same scenario as me. But I went to one meetup and I just found it to be just lots of people talking really negatively about how difficult it is, the struggles. And look, this is real stuff, but there wasn't then the positive side to it as well.
mm,
And I kind of then recognized that that sort of networking for me that wasn't going to be what I wanted and needed because I was new and I wanted to look at things positively and I didn't want to be influenced by all these people saying, oh, it's really hard. I don't, you're going to find it just an absolute struggle. And so then I kind of recognized that whilst I do want also to kind of know people that are at a similar point, in the journey, I also wanted to kind of to meet people that were much further ahead as well. And so like now there's like one business networking thing I do, and there's a really nice mix of
mm,
some people that are really early in their journey, but others that are like really successful. And it's such a positive space. And I just think like not toxic positivity at all, because none of us want that or need that. But like I am a big believer in positivity breeds positivity.
yeah.
Positivity, can't even say the word. And coming back to that vision, like also, the mindset that you have when you create that plan and that vision for yourself will be absolutely dependent on what you believe is possible. And
Mm,
when you are you know, when you're feeling good, when you're feeling confident, you believe like sometimes like anything's possible, but
mm,
actually when things are tougher, or if you are surrounding yourself with the naysayers, you don't believe that what is possible is possible.
hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You make such a great point. I once heard this great phrase, here comes Laura with her metaphors again.
I'm going to make a
Beer.
sign one of these days. I'm going
Woohoo!
to just whip it out and it's like, here she goes again.
I might get by one of those neon signs and we'll just light it up behind me. But like be a radiator, not a drain. Now, when I did my coach training, I also did some additional CPD and emotions coaching because emotions are very real. They're data. They are part of the human experience. So I very much acknowledge all emotions, and I think it's important to. But there's then the how do we process it and move through it. So back to what you were saying about positivity, I think it's so important that we acknowledge the good emotions that we feel and we hold on to them because sometimes they can be taken from us when something else happens, and that comes back down to the
Mm.
resilience and tenacity I was talking about again. Like, if we go to even look at the sports stars of the world where they've failed so many times
Yeah,
over, but they've kept going because they still have that believing mindset. So even if the strong negative emotions are there, it's about having that growth mindset that we've talked
yeah,
about before to embrace that actually what is possible because it
yeah,
is possible. It can feel hard when
yeah,
and I'm going to take it internally now. It can feel hard when you are building a procurement function, when you've got lots of resistant
mm,
stakeholders. It is hard. Let's acknowledge it, but let's look
yeah,
at the possibilities. And it might be that we don't see huge possibility, but let's take the little strands and build on it.
yeah,
So I really like what you say because it's important to have the honest conversations and not the, oh, everything's great and wonderful all
yeah,
the time. But it's also it's important to see the glimmers, I guess, like the little strands of positivity. And I can only think about an example that I had last week when I was doing some team coaching with a procurement team and they were getting some they were going for sign off for their new I'm just going to call it procurement vision
yeah,
to protect what it is they're doing but they and the thing is that vision had been mentioned before a few years earlier but the timing was wrong, the
yeah,
sponsorship was different, so they have spent years building up that function using the stories of where they've had success in one part of the
mm,
team and then moving it over to the other.
yeah,
And we've been clutching at those little glimmers to keep them going. They've done the work, I've held
yeah,
the space for them to
yeah,
do it. And so then when it came to last week, we were looking at, okay, where is that sponsorship? Where is that person who believes in that vision with
yeah,
you? How can we use them to influence those? Because they
yeah,
might have influence that you don't yet have. How
yeah,
can we use them to help you bring that vision to life? And then lo and behold, they got it signed off, which was an
yeah,
amazing win.
yeah,
Amazing win. But I think it's just the importance of having support is, I think, is the point I'm
yeah,
saying. So to have their sponsors
yeah,
lined up because not everybody wants to see procurement fail. I don't think anyone wants to see procurement fail, but
yeah,
not everybody is a naysayer or
yeah,
anti-procurement person. So when you're building that vision, having the tenacity and resilience, but also seizing those golden opportunities that are
yeah,
there, and
yeah.
it's the same with your career if you're doing it on an individual basis,
T
I,
Totally. Yeah. And
yeah.
I think like we've spoken about feedback before, haven't we? It's kind of, it's I think, working out who the right sponsor is, but then it's looking at, like you say, how can you then kind of engage that sponsor further and how can you use their feedback and how can you get them kind of advocating? And absolutely, this is relevant internally in an organization, in a function. It's relevant in your career. Like, I've had multiple conversations this week with various people at various different points of their job search. And actually, a question today from someone was, if I am kind of seeing roles out there, how can I maximize my chances of standing
Mm,
out? And like sometimes it is looking at, who do you know in that organization? Who do you know that knows people in that organization? Not even
yeah.
knowing someone there, but who do you know that could introduce you to that person and say a few nice words and advocate for you and do some of the work for you?
Mm,
Actually having those relationships changes everything. Like, we talk about relationships all the time, don't we, in procurement, but
mm,
it makes or breaks success in procurement, and those relationships will make or break your growth in your career as well. So
mm,
like leaning into the like who are those people and how can how can you use those people in very different ways, and some it might just be a sounding board and some it's because you want their kind of advocacy to help you to do it, but some it might just be that trusted advisor, kind of that can offer the challenge that you were talking about earlier, but in the right way. Because I
Mm,
think it is like, often people seek advice from the wrong people, and
yeah.
actually, that can mean that you're just getting lip service. Oh yeah, 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 no, I think that seems like a good idea, but actually, they're not getting the challenge, or it can be the negative view when
Mm,
there is a different way. So I think, like, choosing wisely, I think we've said that a few times, haven't we, when it comes to working out who is that person, or people, can make a big difference.
yeah. Yeah. It's a great point. I was just thinking when you were saying that as well, going back to the sponsorship people and what we said earlier about writing goals down, when you're trying to sell your vision internally of how you want that procurement function to look. We were talking about with this team last week, we were talking about, well, who is the sponsor that's going to do that work for you? Like you were saying
Yeah,
earlier, like who's going to speak well about you when you're not in the room, because that can help you to gain even more traction. But we're also talking about like how can you gain commitment from that sponsor that they will continue to speak for you when you're not in
yeah,
the room, and getting them to commit, because that's
yeah,
also another influence principle
yeah,
that you can pull on. So when and I think sometimes we're so afraid to sort of hold people to their commitments, or to say, look, you said you would help me, or like I helped you out. Would you mind helping me out with
yeah,
this, with this piece of advice? So I think don't be afraid to ask. So if you've
yeah,
got you've got a vision that you're so passionate about and you think there's someone who can help you, I think there's definitely that, ask. What's
yeah,
the worst that can happen? You might get a no. But what
yeah.
if someone goes, that sounds great. Oh, and by the way, I can help you.
Yeah, no, great point.
Uh,
And I think when I was just listening to you as well, like, something else just kind of popped into my mind. But I think, again, if it is a personal vision, like, where is it you want to get to? I think actually kind of almost imagining yourself at that point, and starting to, like, really think about, if that's where I want to get to, how would that version of me think, make decisions, behave, show up, maybe
yes.
dress? It's actually, how would that person introduce themselves in meetings, ask questions in meetings, contribute? Like, it's visioning that future version of yourself that
Mm,
you want to be, because we kind of need to become that future version before we're recognized as that future
yeah.
version. And I remember being kind of like almost taught that early on in my career. It's like, look, if you want to progress in your career, you need to almost be kind of operating at that next level. So it's a kind of no-brainer that of course they're going to move you into that level of role, because you're already doing those things, you're already
Mm,
behaving like that senior manager, even if you don't yet have the title. But I think it's looking at, when you've got the vision, whether it's team, individual, whatever it is, it's then the gap analysis, isn't it? If
mm.
this is where we want to get to, where are we, or where am I right now? And what are the things I can do to start, you know, plugging some of those gaps?
Yeah, all great points. And I think and that's where I think the mindset comes in, because it's sometimes people need to step outside the comfort zone to be like that, right? Well, do I deserve to call myself that? And
Yeah,
I think even people in the most senior of positions sometimes feel like, am I senior enough? Like, yes,
totally.
step into it. So I think that's a great point that you make there.
Yeah.
Well, I think in terms of vision, I think we've covered quite a lot more ground than we thought we might then in that episode. So what would you say are the biggest takeaways there for this vision episode?
Well, I think firstly, um, working out what the vision is can be quite difficult sometimes, and sometimes that's not a quick decision sometimes. So it's a process almost to get to the point of having the vision. But I think it's then, one of the big ones has to be, or two, um, who are the people that can help you to get
Hmm.
there, and how, and what's the step-by-step plan, funnily enough, because we talk about that all the time. But you're not going to change the world overnight. You're not going to go from where you are today to where you want yourself or your
Mm.
team to be in 2 years' time. You're not going to do that in days, weeks, or even months. And it's step by step, but it's breaking it down and it's working out, like, there's going to be all these different pathways to get there, but what's the chosen pathway? And really, what are those first steps? Because you can only do it bit by bit. So, but what are the
Mm.
first ones that you're going to take?
Yeah, all great points. I think you've summarized the whole episode perfectly with those 3 points, to be honest. And I think, choosing the path, and then we test and we tweak, and that's what the milestones of the coaching process is, right? Because like you say, you're not going to have that overnight transition
Yeah,
over time. And going back to that internal team experience I was talking about, the vision wasn't ready back
yeah,
then. It's ready now. And
yeah,
because they've done the work in between. So I definitely think that is a great summary of what you've done there. And just to add to that, the mindset that we were talking about, you have to step into that mindset. And sometimes it's the mindset that's holding us back, not the knowledge of the steps.
yeah,
Sometimes we actually know what we need to do, but our mindset's
yeah.
holding us back. So I definitely think that's something that also comes up a lot
Yeah.
in the
And I think
conversation.
this is quite pertinent because obviously right now we're starting to look at our vision, aren't we,
Mm,
collectively for procurement pivots and,
mm.
going into next year. And, I think, this is something that, we're doing very much as we speak at the moment in the background, which we'll be kind of sharing with people in due course. But I think, it's from a personal perspective, just it can make such a difference when we're clear on where we want to get to and just what the steps are. But let's be honest, it doesn't always go to plan, and that's okay, really, but it's kind of knowing that, the step by step isn't always going to happen in that linear order.
Yes, that's where the flexibility and the adaptability comes in,
Yeah.
right? And then you've also got the person, the sponsorship, cheering you on while you make those adjustments. If it was always that simple, we'd all be everywhere very quickly and with, no deviations. And would transformation even be a thing without all the ups, downs and sideways moves that we have to do sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, brilliant. Enjoyed having this conversation as always, Donna.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Once again, it's great to have you here with us on this journey. So we hope that you're taking, something away from this episode and that you can apply it to your future vision for yourself or your team. But do share with us, anything that you've taken away. And we will catch you next time.
Brilliant. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.